Fresh works on so many levels because of its execution. There's so many different ways that it just could have gone 100% wrong, and it could have really just gone in the wrong direction. It could have been overly crass and grotesque, which it never really seemed to drop itself into. It could have taken itself just way too seriously, which would have diminished the fantastic balance of horror and comedy that it had going for it. Or it could have gone in the complete opposite direction and just been 100% wacky and silly, which would have really taken the seriousness of its actual subject matter out of it, and it really would have been a much cheaper film because of it, if you ask me. Instead, Fresh takes all of the cliches and tropes that we're expecting and bobs and weaves, goes in different directions every single time and fucks with those expectations in just this beautifully perfect way that I really, really appreciate, as it's a film that is just a very visceral, in-your-face experience that will not be for the masses. This ain't a crowd pleaser for just about anyone. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I literally showed this to my parents last night. They weren't massive fans, but hey, for the people that Fresh is for, this movie will be like for them, you know what I mean? Like very strongly for them. But anyway, let's get into talking about what is so good about this movie and delve into the spoilers a little bit. So from the get-go, Fresh opens up as a straight-up romance movie filled with charm and cliches, and honestly, the first third is devastatingly cute. It's adorable as it plays out this depiction of a terrible date, giving us insight into why the main character Noah longs for such a connection so much, as she finally experiences a typical movie meet cute when she meets Sebastian Stan's character Steve at the supermarket. And it's here where the two hit it off and we like them together and we like him as a character, and that is freaking vital for what the rest of the film is gonna juxtapose to come following this kind of cutesy stuff at the moment. The fact that we see Steve as a nice and charming and typical romantic lead is vital in showing us just how effective his method is, and shows us just how easily we as the viewers could fall into this kind of trap, into something that could very easily happen in real life. That is actually what is so terrifying about this, that it's not quite so out of this world, even if the film takes it a little bit too far and one step out of reality. But yeah, what he plans to do from there is that he will capture her, and he plans to do very bad things to her, which I'll get to shortly. Now, where most movies might go from here if they were a typical kind of low-budget horror movie, they'd probably go in a direction that would definitely not work for me in certain ways. Like, the guy would probably capture the girl and he'd probably torture her a little bit or something. If they were going for real just shitty shock value stuff that we don't want to see, he'd probably rape her and it would just get super icky. But instead, Fresh goes for something much more unique than that. After the initial capture, the film decides to drop the opening credits now, half an hour into the movie, which is just so cool. I just think it's just like so ballsy for a movie to do that. Like, what movie does that? I just think it's cool and unique, and it kind of just shows the utter confidence that this movie has as its own unique brand of horror comedy that I just really appreciated. And this half hour in opening credits also acts as a great segue into leading what the rest of the film really is. Like, this is the beginning of the real film, you know what I mean? The first third is kind of like the cutesy fake stuff, kind of drawing you into this thing that just seems nice and, you know, unassuming, unmalicious, or whatever the hell the right word would be. Before then, it drops you into that just vicious world that's to come for the rest of the film. This first half hour twist is also huge potential for first time viewers who might not be familiar with the premise as well, which was actually one of my regrets going into this movie, because like I didn't know the specifics, but I knew it was going to get dark. I knew something was going to go wrong. The R rating didn't help. The fact that it was like listed in being part of the horror subgenre and stuff, in terms of like places online and everything, stuff like that didn't exactly help. There was kind of no way of me going into this movie not expecting something, you know, a bit funny to happen. But still, I didn't know the like exact specifics, and I imagine going in with this with absolutely no expectations, just going in blind, would make it that much more impactful. Like, I think this would be legitimately shocking when it gets to the horrific vibe that we get from the rest of the film there. You know, that turn of events is quite a big leap to take if you don't see it coming. Yeah, unfortunately I did see it coming, so that kind of like, it diminished my enjoyment just a little bit, but really not so much, like not too much, you know. I love the hell out of this film. I just thought I should probably mention that part. But yeah, not many movies would be really this daring to pull something like this half-hour twist off, and the few films that would be daring enough to do it probably wouldn't execute it quite as well as this one, because the first third of this movie really does act as like this really super convincing, well-made rom-com style of film on its own, and like I really enjoy that part of the film in its own right. As it actually stands, if this movie kept going as just a romance movie, I probably would have liked it quite a lot as well. But the turn that it does take makes me like it just that much more. You know, I'm a horror guy, so I was into that turn and I thought it was sick. Anyway, from here on, the rest of the film takes place in this one room where Noah is stuck in, as she is told that Steve plans to slowly, over time, take pieces of her, literally pieces of her body, to sell as meat to his highest bidders. Yeah, that's where this movie's going in at this point. Anyway, Steve, as we learn, is somewhat of like this delicacy chef type of guy, you know, a very specific type of meat that he is going after here. And he's also got some sort of surgeon expertise. I don't know if he's a real actual doctor or not, or if he just somehow learned surgery in some way, but either way, this combination of cooking and surgery has brought him into this world of like cannibalism where he has made the big bucks. He's gotten rich off of this, and over the years he has regularly captured girls and done this. Noah is just the latest victim. Anyway, so yes, Steve basically is the biggest fucking lunatic that you've ever seen in your life, and I think what makes it work so well is that Sebastian Stan plays him with such joy. Like I actually feel like kind of you like him in a really fucked up way, in a way. Like you watch Steve dance as he's cooking some of the human meat and stuff, and it's like, what the hell am I watching? At this point, I just found it to be so impactful when it came to switching tones just left and right all the time. Like at one point you're watching Noah struggle and the horrible depiction that's going on there, and then yeah, you're watching Steve just fuck around in his kitchen and stuff, and it's just silly. And it's like, not many movies can pull something like that off. I think that Fresh here really does. But I think what elevates the film from that viewpoint is that we also get to see everything from the female perspective throughout this film. With the protagonist in Noah, we see everything through her eyes, and it really does make everything surprisingly disturbing. I mean, maybe not that surprising given the premise, but like, I overall did find Fresh to be surprisingly disturbing, because this ain't my first rodeo, you know? I watch plenty of horror, I'm pretty familiar with the genre and everything, but watching it, I think because of that first third and then the turn that takes from there, I think that made it really disturbing for me, as we see that we actually really like the character of Noah, or at least I did, and seeing her in this real situation where we've seen her not be in that situation, it just makes it that much more real to me, and it just made me feel like genuine concern for her in a way that not a lot of movies make me feel. Like, I watch a lot of horror movies where I'm like, yeah, I want them to get away, come on, let's do it. But in this, I really wanted her to get away. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it was a bit stronger in that kind of way, as I had just this real worry for Steve's victims. And the wild thing about Fresh is that it still somehow manages to have a sense of humor about itself throughout as well. For as dread-fueled as the plot of the rest of this film becomes, as it's a survivalist thriller type of movie, as we watch these poor capturees trying to escape from this hellhole, Fresh is still surprisingly energetic and just fun, to be honest. It also has somewhat of a feminist touch, as we strongly sympathize with these women, and when things finally come to the climax and the fight for their lives proceeds, there's something ultimately satisfying about the now predictable direction that Fresh takes. Yeah, things kind of begin to become like pretty predictable. You know where everything's gonna go come the third act, but still, something about Fresh makes that part just really enjoyable to watch anyway. So yeah, predictably, they defeat Steve, you know, initially by literally biting his dick off, might I mention, which during the moment I was like, she should do that. She should bite his dick off. Do it right now. Come on. And I wasn't actually expecting it to. And then she did. And I'm like, yeah, I was roaring. Like, I was making audible reaction sounds when I was watching this. I couldn't believe that it happened. Anyway, interestingly though, after this, what follows, or at least starting from there, is the very goriest part of this movie, which I find interesting because we didn't really see all that much gore prior to this scene. We didn't see that much gore when it came to what Steve was doing to the women, including Noah and Molly and whatever the other, Penny was the other girl's name. And I actually kind of appreciated that, because we never really needed to see that. Like, we don't need to see the horrible shit that he's doing. You know, we get an idea. There is a horrific scene where he literally cuts off the main character's ass cheeks, I guess, which I was shocked by because I'm like, what does that look like now? It's just horrible. It's horrific to think about in actually like practical ways. Like if this actually happened to you, if you think about it in a way beyond just what, like, this is a fun movie, like, realistically, that is a horrible situation to find yourself in. And yeah, I appreciated that the film was willing to go places like that, but that it also managed to evade being too gory when it came to the victims and their suffering there. But then it goes all out when we see the depiction of Steve suffering as they defeat him at the end before he finally gets shot in the head come the final blow. And I just think that really worked. It worked as kind of a necessary way for us to get that, like, you feel that vengeance on their part. It was just kind of gratifying in that way. And yeah, I think that Fresh played that cleverly as it kind of showed the different types of violence that it could do, if that makes any sense. Like, in some ways it's horrific, and then in other ways it's glorious, and that's kind of a hard thing to pull off for a lot of films, if you ask me. But yeah. Anyway, Fresh is a highly upsetting film, realistically, when you really put everything together, but it also is really, really just a joy to watch as well, somehow. I think Fresh fully diverts from the context of the realistic portrayal of these events, though, by allowing itself to be a pretty over-the-top example of something that actually can and does take place in real life. You know, women and people and stuff do get captured, and there are some fucking crazy people out there. Maybe it's not so, like, it's not a rich man who is a chef and he's taking people slowly, like, their meat and everything. Maybe it's not quite that cartoony. Maybe it is. I don't fucking know. I don't know everything about the world, but yeah, I do think that this movie allows itself to go in, like, one step too far of a direction that I can buy super seriously. And that makes it easier to kind of swallow the ongoings on screen where you're like, oh my god, ugh. Instead of feeling sick, you're like, all right, this is just a movie, it's silly and entertaining, and I kind of appreciated that as well. The movie is all things from entertaining to ghastly as it depicts the horrors of modern dating literally and metaphorically. I think Fresh is impressive in terms of owning its strong identity, and I also think it's an awesome sign for horror to come, because this is a movie with, a pretty big name with Sebastian Stan there. It has beautiful cinematography, looks amazing. This, like, it's a really well put together film, and with clearly, like, a pretty high budget for horror at least, and that's just kind of a really cool thing to see, where it's like, cool, are we gonna get more stuff like this? I really hope so. That being said, I find it so funny that this is on Disney Plus, just by the way. I know for the Americans out there this is on Hulu or whatever, but it's on Disney for us, and that's just so funny. It's like, yeah, sure, put the cannibalistic, dick biting murder-thon movie on Disney's streaming service. Isn't that just hilarious? I love it. I love that fact. Anyway, yeah, I'm done. That's about all I have to say about Fresh. I thought it was awesome. I love it, and I'm gonna go now. Thanks for watching. Do the things, please. Goodbye.